Hello, my fellow readers. This is iDark Symphony 777 with another pair of fanfiction reviews. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story, and finally, it's my opinion. My opinion is I indicative of the world. So, before I actually get started on the review, I do want to mention that the reviews are possibly going to be slowing down due to unforeseen circumstances involving my landlady doing something really shitty involving the internet. That's all I will say about it. If you want to, I won't say anymore. So it might become harder to be able to upload certain reviews because after this, and also you'll actually be seeing this little thing down here because I'm downloading a lot of games onto Steam. So that way, to account for the fact I'm going to be playing I'm kind of going to be stuck not being able to review. So just ignore the thing in the corner. You know, better yet, I turned it off. So for those of you asking what's going to be what's going to happen afterwards, I'll probably make a community post talking about it a little bit more. But as of right now, it's uncertain how frequent I'll be able to actually review from this point until I've actually gotten the internet issue settled. So take away. So I do apologize. But let's actually get into the two stories I'm going to be reviewing today, which are Resident Evil Outbreak Daylight by Chaos the Champ and Patient Confidentiality by Mademoiselle Anime Armoire. Let's start with Outbreak. Oh, god damn it. This is a dramatic novelization of the online video game, i.e. Resident Evil Outbreak. Now, before I get into the actual meat and potatoes of this story specifically, I should at least explain the circumstances of Outbreak, specifically in the context of the continuity of Resident Evil. Mainly because it's actually important to not only to specifically this review. So, Resident Evil Outbreak was actually a duology of games made in the early 2000s by Capcom for the PlayStation 2. It actually chronicles the adventures of 8 random normal everyday people during the outbreak of Raccoon City, and as they try to escape from the city as it's being overwhelmed by zombies and eventually gets bombed into dust. Why is this important? Well, Outbreak is very, very unique among Resident Evil for 2 reasons. One, it's unknown how unknown it is, what exactly is canon of the games. After Outbreak 1 and Outbreak 2 occupy sort of a limbo in terms of the overall timeline of Resident Evil. Nobody really knows if the events of the games are actually canon. The only news we got regarding Resident Evil Outbreak in terms of the greater Parthenon or the greater storyline of Resident Evil is during Resident Evil 7, where it was revealed that where Ethan Winters discovers a newspaper article that was written by Alicia Ashcroft, who is actually one of the 8 survivors from Outbreak, confirming that at the very least, 1, the events of Outbreak does happen, and 2, Alicia Ashcroft is one of the survivors. Now, spoiler alert, Alyssa dies in this story. However, I'm willing to forgive the author because at this point, this was made way, way before Resident Evil 7 was even a thing. Let alone, I don't even think Resident Evil 5 was a thing. So I'm going to forgive the author on that. The other thing, and what's more important to this review specifically, is how it plays out in regards to a novelization. How the game plays is you get a series of missions. You basically get 4 missions in the game, and You basically pick not only who you play as, but what AI partner you kind of get following with you. And you can play the game online and have it be co-op, and basically each person plays like one of these 8 characters. And the story changes depends on not only who you're specifically playing as, but who your partner is. So there's a lot of flexibility to how the story progresses. That makes it difficult when making a novelization, because a big part in writing a novelization is having to stick as close as you can to the overall structure of the story. That makes it very difficult when the story itself is very flexible on how it's presented and how the story is told. I'm not going to blame the author for this, because at the end of the day, I would say this is more of a risk sort of deal, because, okay, so probably the author played a game of Outbreak 1, picked like 2 random characters, and then kind of just winged it from there. I don't really mind. That being said, this is a shitty novelization. It's really bad. Case in point, what is the plot of this story? Well, it's pretty much just the plot of Resident Evil Outbreak. These 8 random people, which are let me actually get pictures of them. They are, in order, Alicia Ashcroft, Sidney Lennox, David King, George Hamilton, Kevin Ryman, Jim Chapman, Mark Wilkins, and Yoko Suzuki. These are the 8 characters that are the main group that you read along with throughout the entire story. Now, there are some advantages when you have a crew this long, but there's also disadvantage when you have a crew this large, because you have to balance everything between all 8. Again, this is more due to the fact that Outbreak is more of a unique sort of deal. So I can't really blame the author too much for kind of having certain characters get priority. We'll talk about that in a bit. So I can't really say too much. Basically, all 8 of these characters, they're just doing their normal random things, and they eventually coalesced in this place called Jay's Bar, which is where the beginning of Outbreak happens. They go in, they start talking, and they start drinking, all this news and stuff. Then some random Joe just wanders into the story. The owner of Jay's Bar basically, walks up to the guy, asks, no, not the owner, the bartender, asks him, say, hey, you okay, man? Because the guy's head's down. He kind of puts his hand on his shoulder. The guy lifts his head, reveals he's a zombie, bites and kills the owner, not the bartender. Then you, the 8 characters, having to escape and pretty much just try and find a way out. And that's basically the story goes from there. They go through all 4 stories, all 4 levels of Outbreak 1, which is the bar, which I think one of the other levels is an inn. The final level is the Raccoon City University. I can't remember what the 4th one was. Because I remember those 3. I can't remember the 3rd one is. Look, I think I believe the subway and sewers and stuff like that. And they run into other members who are trying to just basically live and escape and try to figure things out. They run into various police officers, but they all die. They have to team up and work together to kind of deal with each zombie as they go along. It's fine in terms of plot line, because again, Outbreak is unique, but it's not a novelization. Why? Because the author gets so much fucking wrong with the story. So, in essence, the story kind of starts from the perspective of a rat. This is where this is the first thing the author gets wrong. the Raccoon City virus canonically actually doesn't spread through rats. It actually spreads through the water system. Basically, what happens is uh, before the events of the Raccoon City incident, a group of Umbrella counter bioterrorists, police, basically Umbrella secret police, are ordered to hunt a man named William Birkin. Birkin is developing this virus called the G virus, and and he's doing it without approval of Umbrella. So they basically hired him to apprehend him, kill him if need be, and get the G virus from him. They do corner him. He's still working on the virus. He has the virus in his hand. Well, he has two viruses. Birkin basically tries to get the briefcase. The briefcase has the virus in it. One of the soldiers gets jumpy, shoots and kills Birkin. The other guy's like, no, gun down, because they're worried that they're gonna shoot the virus. They get the briefcase. They find out the virus is in the briefcase, and they wander off. Birkin, with his last breath, gets the other G virus sample, injects it into himself, and he turns into like the famous G monster that hunts you throughout most of Resident Evil 2. Then Birkin actually hunts the soldiers and kills them. And what happens is, as he kills them, the vials actually break, and the mixture actually goes into the water system. In this story, for whatever reason, instead of following what happens canonically, because this first chapter is just basically showing a rat's perspective of Birkin killing one of the guys. It's right here. Let's see. Where is it? Yeah, right here. A man dressed in UBCS. That's another problem. Being bludgeoned up by an immense hunk of organic flesh and immense ever-staring eye protruding from a shoulder. That's Birkin. And the rats just randomly turn into zombie rats from ingesting the T-virus, which doesn't make sense because none of those soldiers actually become zombies because, one, they're not infested they don't actually get the T-virus in them, and two, how do the rats actually absorb it? Granted, you can make an argument that, they drink the water that the T-virus is in, but no, the story specifically mentions that the rats are the ones spreading the virus, in essence comparing what's happening in Raccoon City with the Black Plague in the olden times. So it's so confusing why the author went this path, because that's for trying to be a dramatic novelization, you basically start the story off with like making shit up. You just randomly it doesn't make any sense, and then it kind of continues from there with like certain characters kind of being in this. That's another problem with the story. All the characters are just wildly inconsistent. They're good characters, but they're still wildly inconsistent. There's no the pacing is too fast. There's no border breaks between the whole thing, and that even bleeds into the story because now you're getting like perspective switches, but it's like, since there's no break, your mind doesn't naturally break it up. You're just kind of having to force to like reread the sentence to kind of reorient itself. I know that's what I had to do. Certain like there's no italics for thoughts. Like this is like George Hamilton thinking himself, and it's like where's the italics to show that he's thinking? Well, I don't know. And even like certain plot points are completely ignored, like the whole thing with like them hiding at Raccoon. That doesn't happen until Outbreak File 2. And then you're just randomly bringing details from File 2, but you only bring like the Raccoon Raccoon Police Department falling. And when you get that wrong, when like Marvin Branagh dies outside the building, he doesn't die inside the building. He dies outside the building by hunters who don't appear in Brazil, who don't appear in Outbreak, like at any point. If you're gonna, and plus, if you're gonna do File 2, where's the zombie elephant? Like, it's a zombie elephant. You can't not put the fucking zombie elephant. If you're gonna start putting elements from File 2 into the story, where is this thing? Where is Jimbo here? Where's Dumbo? It doesn't make any sense. You completely forget, like, you completely mess up how, like, certain events of the timeline happen. Like, Leon is introduced, like, at the beginning of the story as, like, a friend of Kevin's, like, hey, Leon, how are you doing here? Problem is, Leon doesn't really show up in Raccoon City until, like, the very end of the incident. Resident Evil 2 happens at the very end of the incident. It's literally, like, only, like, a couple hours before the United States just said, nuke them. But both Outbreak and Resident Evil 3 happens at the very takes place at the very beginning of the incident. Resident Evil 2 takes place at the very end. So I'm like, why is Leon there? Why is Martin Branagh randomly get killed by hunters who don't even appear in Outbreak? I don't even think they appear in. I don't even think they appear in 2. They might. I think they appear in 3. Not 100% sure. You don't introduce, like, it's so weird because you're introducing certain elements from other games, but not introducing other elements of those same games. Like, okay, if you're going to add, like, the hunters, where's Jill? Jill would be running around. Where's Nemesis? Nemesis would be running around. Even Brad Vickers would, like, have Brad Vickers show up to a cameo. But you mess up, like, how Marvin dies, because he actually doesn't die into the events of Resident Evil 2, which, again, happens at the very end of the city. But in this story, he just kind of gets, like, gutted by hunters. The author doesn't even get the gender of the Regis Licker right, because in-game, the Regis Licker's female, and this one is, like, he's just randomly a male. Like, why? Like, just why? And even, like, how the story ends with, like, everyone just kind of giving I'm fine with that. I'm fine with how everyone dies except for Yoko. Yeah, spoiler alert, Yoko's the only one who dies. I mean, Yoko's the only one who survives because she's the only one who didn't get bitten by a rat, despite the fact a big plot point of the game is the fact that everyone is infected from the off, because guess what? It was in the drinking water. It was in the water. So everyone was infested, and a big plot point of Outbreak is the fact that in order for them to even think of leaving Raccoon, they gotta cure themselves first. Why? Just why? Why? And that's not even, like, accounting for, like, Greg Mueller and Thanatos, who I think only appear in File 2. I don't think they appear in File 1. I could be wrong on this, so don't correct me on that. So, because it's a very good chance I'm wrong on that. So it's just it's very inconsistent on, like, how it handles details regarding the actual events of the game. Like, because if you're going to do this, include all of it. If you're going to randomly include one of the levels from File 2, why not include all the levels from File 2? And even then, the one level you put from File 2 in the game, you got the details fucking wrong, because hunters don't show up and said it makes it. I'm getting ahead of myself. Point is, the plot's a mess. It's really, really convoluted in how it's approaching the canonicity of Outbreak by just randomly just bullshitting around and all that. Next, we got the characters. What are the characters? Honestly, I like the characters. The problem is, none of the characters are completely canon to themselves. That's another issue. Why? Why are you, like when it, like, it's another thing with, like, novelizations. When you're trying to do a novelization, it's a good idea to keep the characters as close to their canon self as possible because, again, the point of the novelization is you're supposed to be as close to the events of the story. That includes the characters. Let's see. Out of all of these characters, out of all 8 of these characters, the only ones that are actually cannot canon to their canon selves are Kevin, Mark, and Yoko, and also Cindy. Like you get half of you get half of the characters right, but then the other 4 characters are just completely like, yeah, let's just fucking mess with them. Cindy Lanik, no, not Cindy, Alyssa Ashcroft is randomly a feminist, despite the fact that she's canonically not a feminist. Why? Don't know. David King was actually an ex-criminal who apparently murdered a bunch of people. That's like not brought up at all in the canon in like the original game. George is cheating and is kind of like constantly indecisive, but he's like, all right, he's kind of halfway there. Oh, and then this guy, Jim Chapman, the author is like, you know what? We have a sassy black man with blonde hair, really likes puzzles, is really kind. I don't know what I could do with him. Let's turn him into a racist. Why? Why? I don't know what the author was thinking when he's like, let's turn Jim Chapman, Jim motherfucking Chapman, into a racist. Like half the stuff Jim says in the story is just flat out racist insults towards white people. Yeah, black people can be racist too. Did you know that? The internet doesn't like to tell you that. Go on certain websites like, nah, blacks can be racist towards white people because it's reverse racism, and they're yeah. But no, he's very racist. I don't even know why. Because he's canonically not racist. He's like, I think, like in terms of like their canon personalities, Jim's like the nicest guy of the group. I'm pretty sure he's literally just the nice guy, and he's like the rough and tumble one. Oh my god! What the actual fuck? What's even funnier is like Jim's like the comedic relief character. It's like, yeah, let's make the racist guy the comedy character. Yeah, I'm sure that'd be fine. It's just so weird. It's so weird. And even then, like, okay, so like out of the 4 that are like canon to themselves, Mark is fine. I think Mark is fine. He acts like an overprotective father. Because at the very beginning of the story, he has to like arrest his son because his son was like stealing some school supplies to sell for like drugs, and he's like, "I taught you better than this." It's like, and of course, it's like touching upon like black culture and stuff like that. It's like you were there for me. It's like, yeah, but you gotta, let me actually hold on. I think it's actually better if I show you. I think because each of these like 8 or so chapters, like yeah, right here. Jerome, what in the hell, son, you doing? Breaking into a chem lab and stealing school's property? I like to touch that the author does like give Mark, like both Mark and Jim, an accent. I don't know why. I think no. Let's see. Yeah, the author gives Mark and Jim like accents to kind of make them talk jive. I mean, it works for Jim because it's like, he's kind of like the SWAT, like the whole lanky SWAT goofy character who's like constantly like, yeah, like Chris Rock. I don't think it doesn't really work for Mark. Yeah, but like it's like it's showing that Mark, is trying to be a father, but like him raising his son didn't really work because his son still committed a crime, despite the fact it's like I tried giving you education, I tried giving you all this, and yet you're still just committing crimes. and he's like confused. And throughout the story, he's like constantly worried about his son when all hell breaks loose, and he doesn't like. He basically acts like the team father. And he's very kind. He's very stern. Like he takes the most damage out of like everyone before the bombs drop. He's like him and Alyssa are like the only two that die, and he just dies from flat out blood loss. While Alyssa gets shot in the heart. I think he's fine. I like Kevin's character. I think Kevin is pretty good. He's basically acts as like a suave, over machismo police officer who's also very lazy at his job because his whole thing is like he wants to join stars, and he's actually as good a shot as Chris Redfield apparently, but he's not very good at like the paperwork side of things, and he's like kind of lazy that way. It's like, shoot first, ask questions later, maybe hit some ladies. But like throughout this entire story, he kind of learns to kind of grow into his own. He doesn't really survive the whole thing, but it's like, there is actual character development. I do like Cindy is fine. She's basically act like just a normal girl. She's like the most normal of the bunch. So I think for her role, that's fine. And then Yoko Suzuki is just a flat character because her whole thing is the fact that she lost her memories and she doesn't really know what's going on. She was actually a former Umbrella agent and actually was partially responsible for the creation of the T-Virus before the T-Virus itself got retconned by Capcom themselves. Long story. And she's kind of just going to like a weird redemption arc. I can't really fault the author for this because it is canon to her character, but it's fine. And of course, you got the other four. I just really don't like Jim. I think he's just over the top. I don't like the fact that he's just like they randomly turned the guy racist. David King's like a quiet, silent guy. He's fine. George Hamilton, he's fine too. Alyssa Ashcroft is probably the best written character in the entire story. I loved, despite the fact that her being feminist is not canon, like again changing her character. Her character that is presented in the story is actually kind of interesting in the fact that her whole feminist ideology stems from the fact that, okay, in story, there's a scene where they're kind of riding in a Kevin, Alyssa, Mark, and like two other Raccoon City police officers are riding in a van to the Raccoon City Police Department. Kevin's trying to hit on Alyssa. It's like Alyssa's like, why don't you hit on Cindy? It's like, and he goes, I don't like those sweet girls. I like a little spice, and you definitely have that spice. So come on, tell me about yourself. It's like, I'll tell you about myself. And like eventually gets through to Alyssa, who reveals like her whole backstory is the reason why she became a journalist is because of her father. Her father was a very well-known journalist who was also kind of in the habit of constantly calling out his own news articles for sensationalism because he did not like the idea of sensationalizing articles and news in order to get like more people, because it's like he believes it's like a flat lie to do that and disrespectful. So he left his career behind. Alyssa's mom was actually a strong, independent woman who don't need no man, who also really loved to work. She was actually a workaholic CEO. So it's like, okay, I'll be the stay-at-home dad. She makes enough money for all three of us. And Alyssa was raised by her father. However, over time, Alyssa's father's body actually atrophied, and he slowly died because he basically got out of shape, and his body just shut down that way. And he eventually passed away with like Alyssa being the only one like witnessing the whole thing, and she's like holding his hand as he dies, and she cries. Instead of being upset that the husband died, the mother instead brags about the fact that he died and says, "Oh, I got a new husband right away." Yeah, hey. However, the new husband was actually very abusive. So Alyssa witnesses the whole thing, sees this woman, this very strong woman, who bragged about her father's death, and then got a new husband saying that he's better than the husband, and then turns out to beat her. It's like a complete contradiction of the whole thing. And then one night, after hearing Alyssa's about the new father physically abusing the mother, Alyssa takes like a baseball bat, sneaks up behind the man, and starts wailing on him, just basically trying to protect the mother. The mother, however, actually takes the bat away from Alyssa, starts yelling at Alyssa, saying, "Why are you hitting him? You shouldn't be doing that." And Alyssa is filled with like legitimate disgust, because now her mother let her father die, like, and was happy about it. Married another man who beat her mercilessly, and defended him when her daughter was trying to help her. Alyssa was disgusted on the whole idea, and so she basically walled herself up with like all these defenses and stern talking to, as like a defense mechanism for the fact that if she lets anyone, like any guy in, she's worried that she'll become like her mom, this woman who will just capitulate to like the man beating on her. And that is like the cornerstone of not only Alyssa's character, but also Alyssa's dynamic with Kevin kind of like worm his way in, showing that like not all guys are like that, but also showing that it is presented as Alyssa's mom very much in the wrong in the situation. And Alyssa, learning that, not all guys are like her stepfather, and should at least, be cared about. Even if, you won't like them, at least let them in as like a friend. And they even get like a little relationship, like they hit on each other, they flirt. I think like the dynamic between the two is actually the best in the story. It's really well done, but it doesn't help the fact that she's still not in character. She's pretty much a different take on Alyssa, but credit where credit is due. It's still well written. Grammar errors. There's a lot of grammar errors. There really is. I mentioned how there's like no italics. There's missing words. There's like entire sentences where there's no quotation marks. So you don't even know if they're you don't even know there are people speaking until like you're halfway through the sentence. Like, wait a minute, that person's speaking. It's paced very poorly. It's all over the place. It's just not a good overall story. Would I recommend this story? No. I know this story was recommended to me by one of my subscribers. It's fun. If I count this as just a regular story, I might recommend it more based on the characters themselves, because I do think the characters are the highlight of the story. But as a novelization of Resident Evil Outbreak, it's absolute dog shit. Good story, horrible novelization. So let's get to the second story. Patient Confidentiality by Mademoiselle Anime Amour. This is a Batman Arkham series fic, and it's a really good. It's chef kiss. It's really good. So what is the plot of Patient Confidentiality? Well, Patient Confidentiality tells the story of this woman named Amelia Harland, who is a psychologist for Arkham Asylum. Excuse me, but my file got corrupted. So if you're wondering why there's like a random interruption, why I'm randomly stopping, that's why. So let's just get back into this review. Don't worry, I'm going to splice them together. But going back to the story. So the story stars a woman called Amelia Harland, who is actually a psychologist of Arkham Asylum, and she's a very, very kind of a superstar. She's becoming well known, and she's on cloud nine. And then her boss says, "All right, you're gonna do Jonathan Crane." I'm sorry, you're gonna what? Yeah, you're gonna do Scarecrow. Have fun. So the story, for some odd reason, is just a series of psychological sessions. You can see sessions right here: session 1, session 2, session 5, because time goes on. And the story is quite literally a series of these sessions between Amelia Harland and Jonathan Crane. So those don't know who Jonathan Crane is. This is Jonathan Crane. I have no idea why Hugo Strange is like in the background clearing up like, "Hello there, young man. I'm here to pick your brain." Jonathan Crane was actually a former worker of Arkham Asylum who was actually a psychologist. However, he went mad for some reason, and he decided, "I am going to spread fear." He developed his own personal toxin, which is called fear, which is just imaginatively called fear toxin. I don't know if there's an actual official name. If there is, let me know in the comments. That when inhaled or ingested or any other thing, allows people to see their own inner worst fears, and they kind of just mentally break down. He's a very psychological villain compared to like someone like Joker, who's just he's Joker. But this version specifically is based off the Arkham series. So let me actually get a picture of what he looks like. Yeah, so this is what he looks like in Arkham Asylum. You see like the little needles, and he's just lanky and all that. Like, I am here to spray on the Batman. And that's more or less it's more complicated than that. But the basic gist of the plot is just Amelia Harland gets like a job having to do these sessions with Scarecrow, and Scarecrow kind of just fights Harland the entire way as they kind of flirt around and slowly start to fall in love. This is a romance story. I will say that once you get past the surface level of it, it's a very, very psychological plot where it discusses more on the the ideology of Scarecrow and who he is as a person, and how he interacts with Amelia. This is a very character-driven story, and I do think a lot of nice touches comes from the fact in the plot where there are two types of chapters. There's one where Amelia is doing the sessions with Jonathan Crane, and then there are other chapters where, like this one and chapter 5, where you see Harland outside of Arkham and how she's trying to interact with like other people around her and her friends and like that. You see a sort of psychological grip on both characters, because both of these are the only two characters you really need to talk about. There are other ancillary characters, but they are not important. This is literally just Crane and Amelia. And so once you get into like nitty gritty of them, basically discussing with like how each of them function, how each of them like their minds work, and how they kind of connect and like debate against each other, because a lot of the story is just Crane and Amelia kind of just debating against each other, like figuring everything out and trying to like they're threatening each other. And there's even like one session where they kind of talk about like the idea, like whether or not you're either born having fears or like circumstances cause fears, like and show like the different ideology between them and how they interact and how they view certain psychological topics differently. It's a very simplistic story once you get through the whole thing, but it's very much carried by Amelia and Crane being very, very well written. It's their core characters are incredibly well written for what they are, which leads into the characters Amelia Harland and Jonathan Crane. I have to tip my hat to Miss Amour for these two characters. They are really well done. One thing that this story does that's really, I think, really unique is how both characters are like inadvertently sexist. Like Amelia is a misandrist, and Crane is very much misogynist. That's something that do bring attention to. Misogynist is very much sexist towards women. Misandrist is very much being sexist towards men, and that's kind of like bridging. And that topic is how they kind of like slowly start to realize their feelings for each other, because they both realize that the reason for their sexism towards the other gender was due to like traumatic circumstances. Like with Jonathan Crane, his backstory in this story is actually apparently adopted from like a specific comic. I don't know which comic specifically, where he was born to like a mother who abandoned him at his very, very super religious grandmother. And over the course of many, many years, his grandmother would physically abuse him. Like, and I don't mean like since she's like an old woman, she didn't actually hit him. No. She got more creative than that. She made a serum that she would pour over this little suit that she would put on Jonathan, and then she'd drag him into an abandoned church that is across from where they live, throw him in there, and the serum on the suit would actually attract crows, which they would then proceed to basically peck on him. And so he was basically physically abused by his grandmother that way. She also would constantly call Crane's mother a harlot, that he is the son of Satan. He is very, and all sorts of manners, very psychological, very emotional, abusive. Crane then eventually was also bullied in school because he actually had a very significant look to the character of Ichabod Crane from the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's actually a Legend of Sleepy Hollow where apparently he got the whole scarecrow thing from that, and the abuse he got from his grandmother, because that was like what she would usually call him. It's like, hey, scarecrow, time for you to get. As like he's putting on the suit, it's like, you're a scarecrow. Like, God, go scare the crows away. Yeah. He had a crush on this popular chick. However, she kind of toyed with him because, like, oh, she was dating the most popular jock, and then they broke up. He thought, oh, maybe I have a chance with her. She's like, yeah, right, Ichabod. And then basically, her and the ex-boyfriend, apparently the hook backed up, did like a very cruel prank on him that like decided to make him like, all right, if they're gonna do it, I'm gonna get revenge. So Crane waits until prom, grabs a handgun that his grandmother owned. Then, as he timed it right as like everyone was starting to leave, he actually didn't harm anyone. They actually couldn't find any proof that he actually physically harmed anyone. And he describes it as like, what he did was he got near he had like he put the full suit on that his grandmother made him wear. He had like a mask and all that. He pulled out the gun, pointed to the air, and just shot a bullet. He basically only wanted to scare everyone. So everyone starts freaking out. The girl and the ex-boyfriend, basically they hear the bullet. They try to get away. As he's starting the car, Jonathan basically jumps on the car and scares the bejesus. Like, aha! Who is Ichabod now? And basically frightens the guy so much that when he starts driving, he freaks out, crashes the car into a tree. He becomes paralyzed. The lady, since she didn't actually have a seatbelt on, apparently it's implied to like flew through the windshield and died on impact when they hit the tree. So So yeah, that would technically be Jonathan's fault. And so after that incident, and eventually he does kill his grandmother, who basically finds where she's making the the mixture. It's like, okay, the grandmother is actually about to kill him now by having him pecked to death, so that way her hands are technically washed from it. He starts pulling out the mixture. She sees the mixture. She grabs it. She accidentally breaks it and spills it on her. And he runs. And she's like, ah! And then she just freaks out when the crows start attacking her because she thought the mixture was water, because she was unaware that he found where she mixes the whole thing. And so from there he learned what he learned from making that mixture, and made the fear toxin that way. And so he adopted the identity of Scarecrow, this creepy macabre demon who he's using fear as like a coping mechanism because of all the trauma he's had dealt with. What did it have to do with him being misogynic? Well, the main person who abused him for years was his grandmother. So he believes, well, no girl's ever going to love me. Everyone's just going to fear me. So I will just keep that fear alive as a defense mechanism, specifically for everyone, but specifically towards girls, because he believes no one actually care for him. Like, this is something that actually brought up in the story where Amelia asked him, it's like, if say anyone, just hypothetically, if anyone came to you and just cared for you, like as a friend, not even a romance, just as a friend, and was there for you, would you have turned the way you are as Scarecrow and started doing all this stuff? And he even thinks about it. And on his next session back, he actually tells Amelia, I thought about it. Think if someone was there for me, even for a little bit, I actually believe I would have stayed there. I wouldn't have gone the path I did. But that is past. And I think it's a very well crafted character, like someone who embraced this identity as like a shield, because he basically wants everyone to be afraid of him because he was so used to him being afraid of everyone, so he wants to toss it all back. And it's a really well done character of Crane as a character. With Amelia, it's very much the same thing, just the inverse. She was a very lanky girl. She wasn't really that pretty. And so what happened was she had a crush on this random guy named Cody Hill. And Cody Hill eventually found out about it. And so he's like, hey, I got to give you something. Can you come to this classroom with me? He's like, okay. So they go into the classroom. Cody then attempts to actually rape Amelia. And this is teenager Amelia. So she starts freaking out about. She starts, fighting back. She actually managed to get him off her, but he did the groping and all that. And then she hears him say, damn, I'm not going to get my $20. And she immediately feels disgust. It's like, this guy was going to rape me for a bet. And she just and the trauma kind of sticks with her for the rest of her life up to the point where the story kind of happens. And she kind of develops the same style of walls as Jonathan. Like, she completely shields herself from any man. She doesn't have any friends. She has a friend. She's very lonely. She's very closed off from everyone because she's so absorbed in her job because of just the fear of letting a man get close. And the men that she does try, they're like, I don't want them. They're very boring. And it's like, because she's afraid of another situation like with Cody happening where she's sexually assaulted. So she becomes like not as overt as Jonathan. Like, Jonathan at least like admits like, yeah, I'm misogynistic at this point. But he eventually gets over with. Just with Amelia, she does like imply that she is misandrous, but just like Jonathan is misogyny, she actually gets over it by communicating and actually slowly falling in love with Jonathan and realizing, men aren't that bad. It's like it's a really weird through line with both these characters because the fact that they're both sexist in their own ways, and even then Amelia is like honestly is a better feminist character than I talked about with Lisa in Resident Evil, because this one actually feels very natural, and in fact they both come off as like very natural, like how they're treated and how they treat each other. And even then and moving on from that, the dynamic between the two is like very well done. It's basically like two bulls, like two bulls kind of charging each other, and basically both of them are trying to like will the other to turn away, to turn their eyes so that way they can get out of the way. It's very much that dynamic where like Amelia and Scarecrow are trying to just one up each other in psychologically tactics. Like pretty early in the story, Amelia gets hit by the fear toxin. She doesn't absorb a lot of it, but when she goes to sleep, she gets wrapped up in like the dream world that you see from Arkham Asylum, and you even get like the big Scarecrow kind of like, aha, I got you now. She's like, and she goes, instead of like freaking out or getting scared, she's like, wait, this is a dream. Dream something. And she gets like a bucket of sand, and when like Scarecrow's like, wait a minute, why aren't you screaming? And then of course we get
pocket sand.
Just throw sand right in his face. And then when they come back from the session, the first thing Crow's like is like, wait, you're not freaking out? And he's like, he's legitimately confused. Like, wait a minute, you're not even phased? And even Amelia's like, oh, you did something. He's like, no, I didn't. I might have something to do with it. I'm not telling. No. And that's basically their dynamic throughout the entire story, as they're basically just trying to force the other one to look away. And sometimes Scarecrow wins, sometimes Amelia wins. And it's through these psychological challenges, like these psychological stare downs, as they discuss like their backstory and who they are as people, that they actually start to fall in love, and they realize that I don't have to have these sexist thoughts because of how closed off I was from other people. I have someone who actually sees more than that. They see me for me, and it even gets to the point where, at the very end of the story, which actually takes place 2 years after the previous chapter, Amelia's actually has a happy life. She's actually talking to people. She was on a few dates, but nothing ever stuck. And she keeps wanting to see Jonathan somewhere. And she's actually opened up. She's not sexist towards men anymore. She's all those walls that she built up over the years broke down because that weight from what happened with Cody just went away. And then she eventually meets Jonathan Crow, just a random outfit in a grocery market. It's like, oh yeah, I went cold turkey. It's and Jonathan's completely actually stopped doing crimes, and now he's actually working as a psychology teacher at Gotham High. It's I really like it, and the ending scene is them organizing hey, you want to go on a date? It's yeah, I like that. I like that very much. This is arguably one of the best romances I've ever read, and it honestly is astounding. It comes from a Batman story involving fucking Scarecrow, and it's stuff like that makes me keep wanting to read more fan fiction, because I want to see all this crazy stuff, all this this psychotic stuff, all this stuff you never really think of, Scarecrow turn into a good guy through someone finally understanding who he is past the fear and that he's known for, and even empathizing with him, legitimately empathizing with him over the abuse he endured as a child. And also Amelia growing as a character. They both grow as a character. They both help the other break down all their walls and realize, all the stuff they kind of done, all the screwy stuff, the more inverted stuff that Amelia has, and the more overt stuff that Scarecrow has, and kind of realizing it doesn't have to be this way, and kind of growing together because of that. it's a really well done romance. I have zero complaints on these characters. I have zero complaints on the plot. In terms of the pacing, I think the pacing is done perfectly with like switching between chapters that focus on Amelia outside of the workplace, where you kind of see how like where you actually see how kind of lonely and depressed and how and also like where you see like most of the hints towards her being misandrous are because because she's most of the time she's wrapped up in work, and like the sessions which focus on Emilia's dynamic with Scarecrow and how they approach certain situations and how they grow together. Especially, like half of the story is like the sessions, and half of the story is just Amelia by herself, more or less. I think it's paced very perfectly in terms of the sentence structure. I think everything's fine. Grammar errors. I didn't see any grammar errors. I didn't see anything wrong with like sentence structures or anything like that. I think it's all really great. I don't think this is better off alone tier, but I do think if you're a fan of romance, this is a story that you need to go out of your way to read. I 100% would recommend this story. Just 100%. I'm not even gonna ramble and preamble and all that. Patient Confidentiality is a great story. So, what would be my favorite parts of the two stories? Daylight. I guess you could say Alyssa's backstory is the highlight. With Patient Confidentiality, it would definitely have to be the ending. Like even if it's like at the very end of the story, it's such a sweet moment of like her just going to the grocery store. It's like, and then seeing like a tall guy in like a suit. It's like, oh, it's not Crane. And then Crane turned around. It's like, oh, Amelia. It's like, oh my god, he's Crane. And then just them catching up and seeing how much they grew. It's a really sweet moment, and I have nothing to say. What would I fix about the two stories? With Patient Confidentiality, not a damn thing. Just keep keep it as is. Daylight. Where do we even begin with Daylight? Fix the characters, fix the story, fix the fucking writing. Honestly, this story just needs to be rewritten from the ground up. There is so much wrong with it. Like even the part that I do like, which is the characters, don't work because these are not the canon characters. I'm gonna end it right here before I go on like a complete aneurysm. Complain about all this entire group of 8 again. So yeah, that has been Resident Evil Outbreak and Patient Confidentiality. This has been Dark Symphony 777. And I do apologize for any slowdown in uploads that may occur. I'll see you next time, and cut.